In 1921, a young seamstress who had never fired a gun in her life was left on an uninhabited island at the top of the world. She was not an explorer, she was not a soldier. She was a 23-year-old mother from Alaska, and she had come for the money. Her name was Ada Blackjack. Within 2 years, every man on that island would be dead, and she would be the only living soul for hundreds of frozen miles in any direction. What this terrified, untrained woman did to stay alive is one of the most astonishing survival stories ever recorded, and almost no one remembers her name. Ada was a Inupiat, born on the coast of Alaska in 1898. As a girl, she was sent to Nome to be raised by missionaries who taught her to read, to cook, and to sew. They did not teach her to hunt or to build a shelter or to live off the land. She grew up a quiet girl in a tiny frontier town. Her life had been hard. Her marriage had collapsed, she had buried children, and her surviving little boy, Bennett, was sick with tuberculosis. Ada was poor, alone, and desperate for any way to pay for her son's care. So when a stranger offered her good wages for a single season of work in the Arctic, she said yes. The man behind the plan was a famous explorer named Vilhjalmur Stefansson. He believed the Arctic was not a wasteland but a friendly place, where prepared men could live off the land forever. To prove it and to claim a remote island for the British Empire, he was sending an expedition to Wrangel Island, far out in the Arctic Ocean north of Siberia. The expedition was 4 young men, none of them yet 30. Alan Crawford, a Canadian, barely 20, was the leader. With him went 3 Americans, Lorne Knight, Fred Moorer, and Milton Gall. They were confident, well-read, and almost completely inexperienced in the real Arctic. Stefansson wanted Inuit families along, skilled hunters and seamstresses who actually knew how to survive. But word of the danger spread, and one by one they backed out. In the end, only one native person was willing to go, Ada. She would be the only woman, and the only one among them born to that frozen world, though she had never been taught its oldest skills. The men brought rifles, ammunition, and 6 months of rations, enough, they believed, to last until the land provided the rest. And they brought a small gray cat named Victoria. They called her Vic. In time, that cat would become Ada's only companion. In September 1921, they landed on Wrangel Island and claimed it for the British Empire. The plan was simple: hunt through the first winter. A supply ship would return the next summer with everything they needed. There seemed to be no reason to be afraid. The first months went well enough. There were birds and seals and the occasional bear. The men wrote cheerful entries in their diaries. But the Arctic does not keep promises. As the second winter came on, the game grew scarce, the hunting failed, and the rations ran dangerously low. Then came the blow that doomed them. In the summer of 1922, the relief ship set out for Wrangel Island and could not reach it. A wall of pack ice had sealed the island off completely. The ship turned back. On the island, the 5 of them slowly understood the truth. No one was coming, not for another whole year. They would have to survive a second winter on a starving island, with almost nothing left. They rationed every scrap. They boiled old hides and chewed on rotten meat. And slowly, one of the men, Lorne Knight, began to sicken. His gums bled, his legs swelled, his strength drained away. It was scurvy. By January 1923, it seemed hopeless. The men decided someone had to go for help. 3 of them, Crawford, Moorer, and Gall, would set out on foot across the frozen sea toward the coast of Siberia, hundreds of miles away. Knight was too sick to travel. Ada would stay behind and care for him. On the 28th of January, The three young men loaded a sled, said their goodbyes, and walked out onto the sea ice. Ada watched them shrink into the white distance until they disappeared. They were never seen again. To this day, no one knows exactly how or where they died. Now there were two, Ada and Lorne Knight, alone in a small cabin on an island in the middle of a frozen ocean, and Knight was dying. For months, Ada nursed him. She fed him, cleaned him, and listened to him grow weaker by the day. He was frightened and bitter, and at times he turned that bitterness on her. But she did not leave him. She kept the fire burning and the cabin alive while the scurvy ate him from the inside. In June 1923, Lorne Knight died, and Ada was completely alone, the only human being on Wrangel Island. The nearest other person was hundreds of miles away, across ice and open sea. No ship was due. No one even knew if she was still alive. She was a seamstress who had been afraid of polar bears her whole life. She had never trapped an animal, never fired a rifle at anything that mattered, never built a single thing to keep herself alive in the wild. By every reasonable expectation, she had only days left. Instead, Ada Blackjack decided to live. She taught herself, alone, the skills she had never been given. She learned to handle a rifle and to shoot. She built a tall platform beside the cabin so she could see the polar bears before they reached her and keep watch through the endless Arctic day. She set traps for foxes. She shot birds and gathered their eggs. She hunted seals along the shore. She kept the little cat, Vic, fed and close. She kept a diary, writing down each day, so that if she died, someone would know what had happened to her. She fought the cold, the fear, and a loneliness most of us will never have to imagine. And every single day, she chose to keep going. She watched the sea for a ship that might never come. The bears circled the camp. The wind never stopped. But the frightened city girl who could not hunt had become something else entirely. A woman who could survive at the very top of the world with no one to help her, and nothing but her own will to keep her alive. On the 19th of August, 1923, a ship appeared on the horizon. It was the Donaldson, sent at last to find the expedition. As it drew near the island, the crew searched the shore for any sign of life. They found one survivor, not one of the strong, confident young men, a small woman with a cat, who had outlasted every one of them. Ada Blackjack walked off Wrangel Island alive. All four men were dead. She should have come home a hero. For a brief moment, she was a sensation. The newspapers called her a female Robinson Crusoe. But the men who had organized the doomed expedition needed someone to blame, and a poor native woman was an easy target. The rescue captain spread ugly rumors about her, claiming she had let Knight die. They were not true, and he later took them back. But the damage was done. Stephenson, who had sent 4 men to their deaths, wrote a book and profited from the story. Ada received almost nothing. She took the little money she was paid and did the one thing she had wanted to do all along. She brought her son Bennett south and paid for the treatment of his tuberculosis. She had gone to the ends of the earth and nearly died there for him. Ada Blackjack never sought fame and never received it. She lived the rest of her long life quietly and poorly in Alaska, rarely speaking of the island. She died in 1983 at the age of 85 and was buried far from any headline, very nearly forgotten. 4 trained men were certain the Arctic could be conquered. It killed every one of them. One frightened seamstress, who had never been taught to survive a single night in the wild, taught herself and walked home. She had asked for nothing but the chance to save her son. That is the whole of it. That is everything.